This is Doug Wilkerson with Central Christian Center here in Joplin, Missouri, and with Saturday Night Live Life Recovery Ministry here, also with the church here in Joplin. Hey, I hope things are well with you today. We got an encouraging word from Doug for you here. Hopefully it'll be a help to you, maybe encouragement, maybe some guidance. We're just here to try to help, to encourage, to strengthen, to help people just get a little closer to God, or maybe turn the light on where they have a little more clarity in their life. They see things in a different way, a little more clear. Anyway, I'm glad you're with us today or on the replay. So anyway, by the way, we're on YouTube and Facebook, and so you can catch us either place. Today, my title is, What Are You Thinking? Have you ever said that to yourself? What am I thinking? Or someone ever said, What are you thinking? Well, I had this kind of ringing in my ears. What are you thinking? Can you have a positive mind with negative thoughts? There's a question for you. What do you think about that? Our life is really moved in the direction of our most dominant thoughts or our strongest thoughts. So whatever are our strongest thoughts in our life, that's the direction that our life is going to go. And guess what? You get to decide what your dominant thought or your strongest thoughts are going to be. That's the reason why for the question, because if you'll ask yourself the question, I believe you'll get an answer. What are you thinking? Now, sometimes you may have to dig down a little bit to get it, but the fact of it is I have found out, even though particularly in my early years, it's hard and maybe a little scary, but it's better to know than not to know. We've talked about that in many different ways. I'm a believer in coming into reality, because if you don't live in reality, then you're living in fantasy. And fantasy is normally a lie. And how does that work out for you? I don't want you living in a pretend or make-believe world, a land of denial that will basically run you right into the abyss, which we talked about last week a little bit, being nihilistic, hopeless. And then if you're hopeless, then you're helpless. But there is hope. There is hope. You can, if you'll ask yourself this question, that can stir up some hope. Yeah, it can get kind of messy, and life is messy. But if we'll clean up the mess, we'll get clarity. There will be hope. And the Holy Spirit wants to be there to lead you and guide you and help you if we'll tune in. Maybe just a little bit. Any's better than none. You can think back about times that you've had that divine visitation one way or another, and you knew that you got some direction, and you may have not said at the moment it was God, but you can look back and know that it was, because He wants the best for you. He's just looking for a chance. Sometimes He has to pick the right time to come in. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? Out of Proverbs 23:7, it says, For as a man thinks, or as he thinks in his heart, so is he. So as a person thinks in their heart, that's what they become. That's who they are. Who we are is communicated in what we do, because our doings are directly related to how we think, because our thinking determines our feelings, and our feelings generate our behaviors. It's the system. And I know it's cyclical, and sometimes it's other things come, but the truth is we need to be aware of what we think, because it takes willpower to control your behaviors. But if you're just trying to control your behaviors, which is a lot of work they used to do in the 60s and 70s, that your willpower gives out, and then your emotions that are pushing you around, or your toxic thoughts that are pushing you around, then they still have full reign to work. So yes, we need to recognize our behaviors. Yes, we need to recognize our emotions, our feelings, but we really need to deal with our thinking so that we can start to grab a hold of things, and yes, change our thoughts, which will affect how we feel and will alter our behaviors. And we're going to be talking more about that. But the question for today is, what are you thinking? Look at it. Ask yourself, what am I thinking? What am I thinking? Oh, it's a scary thing in there. I don't want to visit that. Well, if we don't look, we can't get it healed. If we don't accept, we can't deal with it. Okay, so another statement that I've got written down here is what you believe, whether it's positive or negative, is what you're going to cause your life to end up being. If we're living in the land of negativism all the time, that's what we're going to produce in our life. That makes sense, right? Because whatever you plant, that's what's going to grow. Whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap. But if you do some positive. Now, I'm not talking about Pollyanna type stuff, even though Pollyanna is probably maybe a little better than negative, but I'm talking about being really positive. And what do I mean by really positive? I'll just ask that question for you because it came up in my head. And what I mean is finding something really positive in a situation. Now, sometimes you may have to look, but there are positive in every situation. Einstein said that in the middle of every difficulty are the seeds or answers to every problem, because they're always there. And that's a positive way of looking at it. I know there's an answer in here. I just have to locate it. And that is a thought discipline. That's a knowing, okay? It's in there. I just have to find it. What are you thinking? What are you thinking? You may say to yourself, I can't control my thoughts. I know I used to say that. I thought I was stuck with whatever I was thinking. But that's not true. Because your behaviors are not permanent, your emotions are not permanent, and your thoughts. If you don't like one of those three or all three of them, if you don't like them, you do have the opportunity to change them. You do have the opportunity to change them. First, you have to know it, and then you have to go to school and learn that. School meaning you need to educate yourself. And the thing you need to educate yourself on the most is yourself. Okay? You have to unravel it. We're not talking about all that today. So you say, I don't have any control. You don't have any control whatsoever. Well, you expect others to have control over what they do, how they feel, what they're thinking, what they're saying, right? You expect them, and you say you don't have any. Well, probably unconsciously, if that's what you're saying, you have those same statements you say to yourself, and you probably are worrying with yourself and causing a lot of turmoil. And what I'm trying to do is get you out of that unconscious state and get you into a more conscious state, so you can move it from the unconscious state into your conscious state. And according to neuroscience, that's the only time you can change those thoughts, when you move it from the unconscious into the conscious, and that's becoming aware. And so I want to do a little experiment with you here. You don't have to turn your, it's a test. You don't have to turn your papers in. This is for you, just for your own awareness level. And that is a thought audit. Okay, are you ready for a thought audit? Okay, we're going to grade these thoughts from 0, which is below 0 is negative, and up to 10, and that's moving in the positive direction. And so you think about it for a second. Where on this scale of 0 to 10 would you fall on the thoughts between worry and peaceful? I'm worried, I'm peaceful. Where are you at on that scale? Are you about 50-50? So it'd be about 5. Or you say, no, I'm peaceful all the time. I'm in a state of bliss. I'm 10 and above. Or you can say, no, I'm always just in the land of worry. I think I may have said last week or the week before that worry is a form of prayer that you don't want to come to pass. Think about it. So I'm at 0, or I'm in the minus realm. Where are you at? Just figure out where you're at. You can't go anywhere until you know where you are, so that you can change it. Okay, first have to become aware. Second, um, uh, negative and positive. Where are you at in your normal thought patterns? Okay, or maybe you want to look at it in a feeling realm, in an emotion, feelings. Uh, are you majority negative or majority positive, somewhere in between? Where are you at? Just just a thought audit. What about worldly things and eternal things? Are you more concentrated on just natural worldly stuff, or are you more focused on spiritual, eternal things that are going to be for eternity? Where are you at on that? Just grade yourself. Where are you at on this thought audit? So one thing about, as I was thinking about this, I was thinking that it seems like a lot of these negative things seem to hit our uh, uh, endorphin, um, dopamine, in dopamine button, and gives us dopamine, because dopamine makes us feel stronger. Actually, it engages us. It's one definition of dopamine is it's a feel good hormone. It also, there's a book out written as dopamine is the more hormone. You want more, and it helps you to produce more when it's in the right direction. But it seems like a lot of the negative things will hit the dopamine, where more of the peaceful, positive, eternal, are more in the area of serotonin, and that's a chemical of that is what they call happiness hormone. That you're more serene, more at peace, and it's not as hyped up as the dopamine. So, and then you got oxytocin, which is the cuddle hormone, in case you wasn't aware of that, but I thought I'd throw that in there. So, what can you control? Well, what you can control is your frame, and what you can frame whatever it is that's happened to you. Okay, it's called framing. Now, there is even a psychological term that's called, it's the framing effect. Okay, and that is a cognitive bias where a person decides on options based on where the options are presented. Okay, whether how the options are presented, whether they're with positive or negative connotations. In other words, it's kind of like this, that well, let me give you an example to start off with before I go on and explain it. And I looked up some things that kind of illustrate it, like Like studies have shown that 75% lean meat is usually more preferred, gets more people to buy this particular product over than 25% fat. Okay, which the numbers are the same, but the 75% lean meat seems to be more encouraging to people to make a move. All right. I remember seeing one it had on milk, and it was saying it was 75% less fat. Okay, instead of saying there's 25% fat in this. Okay, and so we're shifted by how things are framed, and you're looking at the item or the issue through a particular frame of reference, as they would say it. And so so when things are presented to you or coming to you, it's really how they're bringing it to you from if they're saying things to you from a negative. If they're presenting things to you from a negative, that's really trying to push you away from it. If they're presenting things to you from a positive perspective, like 75% less fat, okay, in meat or in milk or in whatever, that doesn't mean there's no fat in it. It just means there's less fat in it. But the fact of it is, the higher number gets our attention, okay? There was another study done on some college students. I'm going to try to go through this pretty quickly because I think I'm running out of time. But they wanted to do some research and see if they could bias people by just by what they have in their hand. And they'd give them a drink. They'd walk up to them and say, "Hey, I'd like to read you a story, and I want you to tell us what you think about it." And so they said, "Would you mind doing that?" They said, "Sure." So they'd hand them this drink. Sometimes it was a hot drink. Sometimes it was a cold drink. They'd hold the drink while they read this short paragraph story. And then somebody would ask them, "Well, how do you feel about this story?" And if it was a hot drink, they usually spoke to it in a warm, they related to it in a warm way. I know this may sound strange, but this is, you can search this research out. And if it was a cold drink, they asked them how they felt, and they were less receptive, more cold, cold reference response to the story, because they biased them by just that. And again, that's another illustration of a frame. Okay, so it's how you look at it. Okay, it's and I've used this term before, and you know this term, perspective. Your perspective dictates how you're going to respond to things. And so your reference is you're looking through a bias that oftentimes our bias is set by whatever comes before the information. Okay. I had a boss one time that I knew that whoever presented their information first was going to be listened to in a deeper way, or more, well, just put it this way, they would you would get a more positive result if you were able to give your information first. And it just seemed to be the way whoever spoke first got you biased the situation. Just something I was aware of at an early age. So Epictetus said this. Okay, he said it's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it. And what he's saying here, no matter if we're biased, no matter if we're shifted, no matter if somebody pushes us through a frame, if you're aware of what's going on, you can decide how you're going to respond. Yeah, you have to override the framing or the bias because you're coming from a different frame of reference already. Because you're wanting to think and decide from a different place instead of what's being laid out in front of you or dictated in front of you. Does that make sense? So what are you thinking? What are you thinking? Okay. He went on to say the rest of that statement from Epictetus. It says, when something happens, the only thing in your power is your attitude towards it. Okay. You can either accept it or resent it. Okay. You can either like it or dislike it. You can either accept it or you can resist it. Okay. So what are you thinking? What are you thinking? That's the question, right? One more scripture, and this is out of Philippians 4:8. It says, "Think on these things." Okay, he told us what to think on. Okay, he gives us a roadmap and says, "Here, go down this way. It's in your best interest. You'll get where you want. You'll get better results this way." What is he thinking? I'll just read the scripture to you out of verse 8. I'll read 8 and 9. It says, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever thing is true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things." Okay. Let this be your frame of reference. Look through these filters, okay, to help you to have better clarity. Why? Let's read verse 9. These things which ye have both learned and received and heard and seen in me, do. Okay. Giving us direction, saying you want to do these things. And if you do these things, he said, and the peace of God shall be with you. And we all want the peace of God. We're in the middle of chaos. Some think we're in the back end of the chaos, but the fact of it is we're still all tore up from all the chaos we had and all the new chaos that's here. And it's and if we're not careful, we can get overwhelmed from that frame of reference. But if we can focus on different frames of reference, maybe we can walk into this place that he was talking about here is, and the God of peace shall be with you. And we need to give ourselves some mental, emotional, spiritual vacation time and a few positive minutes with God to try to restore ourselves and bring ourselves back into spiritual, mental, and emotional sanity can help us to see things differently and more clearly. Okay? So, what are you thinking? Maybe it's time to do a checkup from the neck up. You know, I was going to talk about the Heart Math Institute, where they do studies on the heart and how it affects the brain and synchronizes the heart and the brain and makes our thinking power more powerful by the heart and the brain being synchronized and in the same rhythm. And that's, our heart is so important to our thinking. And if they can be aligned, if they can be synchronized, then we have even a better time to do that. And the way to do that is really in the midst of having those minutes alone, quiet, being connected. So hopefully this is helpful. May the Lord bless you, keep you. May his face shine upon you, and may he give you peace, abundant peace. Receive that peace. And again, make healthy choices. Till next time, please do take care of yourself.